Hello and welcome back to a special episode of the 451 podcast with myself and Phil today. Cam is away on his holidays, so sadly he won't be with us for a couple of weeks, so it's just me and Phil today carrying the podcast. We're going to do a shorter episode today, hot off the press. Barcelona losing last night 8-2 to Bayern Munich, so we're going to discuss the future of Barcelona. And we're going to cover everything. We're going to cover last night's game. We're going to cover who the new manager is going to be. We're going to talk about the academy, the transfer strategy. So yeah, a lot to get through today, but it will be a shorter episode. So we'll start off talking about last night's game. Barcelona 2, Bayern Munich 8. Phil, what was your immediate reaction to the game?
I was going to do a pun then, but I'll decide not to. But no, shocking, absolutely shocking result. I think arguably that's their worst ever result in the club history. Losing 8-2 in a Champions League quarter-final for a club of the stature of Barcelona, I think that's just absolutely appalling, to be honest.
Yeah, I think obviously Bayern were fantastic, and this is not a knock on Bayern's performance, because everyone playing for Bayern last night were superb, whether they were coming off the bench or they were starting. Everyone was fantastic, but Barca the whole team. I mean, even Messi was poor last night. I know
below par, yeah.
And it just shows how reliant Barca are on Messi last night, because every time they looked towards him, he wasn't there. Bayern marked him really well, and the defence as well. The midfield were terrible. I think Busquets showed his age last night. Vidal was terrible. Sergio Roberto got brought off at half time. He was terrible. Semedo got torn apart by Alphonso Davies. PK showed his age. Jordi Alba showed his age. Ter Stegen was poor. I think we could go through the whole team and discuss each individual performance, but yeah, they were very poor last night. I think regardless of how poor Quique Setien's reign as Barcelona manager has been, I think the performance, there's no excuse to get beat 8-2. No matter how
there isn't.
No matter how you set up, there is absolutely no excuse to get beaten 8-2.
Especially in this stage of the competition.
Yeah.
You know, if it was a smaller club, you'd be fair enough, but it's Barcelona, and like you said, not knocking Bayern Munich one bit, because they're on a phenomenal run at the minute. I think they've not lost in 28 matches.
I don't think they've lost since lost
December the 11th.
Yeah, since the restart, they've been on fire.
And they've won 27 of them. So it's just, they're on an unbelievable run. And it was worth the victory completely last night.
Yeah, and I think most people did think that Bayern were going to win the game, because Barca have shown, especially since the restart, that they have a lot of chinks in their armour that need to be repaired, but not as convincing as a 6-goal margin, and conceding 8, especially like you said in this stage of the competition, is it's unacceptable. So what do you think the what's the word? I'm trying to think of the word. Just give me a sec. What are the consequences? That's it. Do you think of last night's game for Barcelona, short term and long term?
The short term effect is the manager's gone, been sacked.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's deserved for Setien?
I think it is. I think it's a much bigger problem, and we're going to go more into depth with that, aren't we, in this podcast? But I think there's a massive problem at Barcelona, and I think it's been developing over the last 5-6 years, ever since the retirement of key players like Iniesta and Xavi. When they left, I think they just had a massive void there. They've lost this spine, and they've lost the style of play that they was known for, especially under Pep Guardiola. And I think they've never been able to recover to those heights. But I think it's just been a downward slope. That's more of a long-term effect, I guess. But from the loss last night, the short term is an embarrassment, and I think they'll be pointing fingers at why they're like this, why they declined so heavily and in the long term, it's unknown how they will react. I don't know whether spending loads of money is the right way to go about it. I think what they need to do is rebuild. They need a rebuild, a massive one, and that could take 5-6 years. Key players for him like Messi he is, in my opinion, the best player in the world. But they need to think post Messi how they're gonna play. Who's going to be their star man. And things like that. And it's just a huge question. It's an interesting topic to speak about, I think.
Yeah, well, we're going to cover how Barca are going to cope with life after Messi later on in the podcast. But you kind of mentioned there around strategy for rebuild, and we'll talk about that now. So, what do you think? I'll ask two separate questions. What do you think the transfer strategy should be, and what do you think it will be? Both for next season and long term. So I'll start with, what do you think it should be?
I think strategy for transfers and how to rebuild, I think they need to focus on, they need to find a manager who will come in and change the fortunes really, and find the style of play that Barcelona are known for. Instead of just they spent €1 billion in the last 4 years on players. And you can't just keep throwing money. So I think they need to either promote youth and just build up from there, or find a style of play and find players that will fit into that system the way they want to play. I think that's the best way to go about it. But like I said before, I think that's going to be a long process. It's not an overnight job.
Yeah.
They need to clear out. I think, I don't know whether you'll agree, but like Deadwood, all these aging players, as good as they've been throughout the whole career, I think the time's been and gone, and there's all these other teams like Bayern Munich, Man City, Liverpool, etc., who are all at the top of the world football at the minute. I think Barcelona need to put the respect for these players aside and just completely rebuild the team.
Yeah, I agree. I think you've got to rebuild an identity for what Barcelona want to be, both short term and long term. So kind of like what Guardiola did in around 2007, 2008, where you invest. You've got a brilliant academy there that's it's teaching one of the best football educations in the entire world. So you've got an academy there with so much talent, both technically, tactically, physically. You ideally, like Guardiola did, invest time into that. Maybe give it 1 or 2 seasons where it's not based around just purely results, trying to get a Champions League, because the pressure of getting a Champions League at Barcelona is so high. Maybe lower those expectations for a season and a half. Maybe focus on these youth players that are coming in. You've seen Ansu Fati this season. He's been brilliant when he's played. He's been, I think he's the 5th top goal scorer. He's only 17. And he's only started a handful of games.
He's got a big career ahead of him if he develops.
But they've got they can't just build round just him. They've got Ricky Puig, who's coming in when he's played this season. He's been brilliant.
He's been a very good midfielder for him.
Come off the bench, and I imagine there's plenty of other talents coming through. So you've got to get that right as well. Building from your academy, like they did with Guardiola. I know a crop of talent that came through at that time with Messi, Pedro, Busquets, Iniesta. That's going to be extremely hard to replicate, because that's one of the...
It's a generational thing, isn't it? All those players coming through and how good they've been. It doesn't happen every year, does it?
No.
It's very rare occurrence. So,
but I think. Go on. Yeah.
No, carry on your point, and then I'll say.
I was gonna say they've just got to invest maybe a bit more time in building or creating a pathway for these players into the first team, because they're starting to lose players that are looking extremely promising to other big European teams, because the pathway to the first team just isn't there for most of them.
No, it isn't. I completely agree. My point was, I think, to do all of this, they need to find an identity again, but they need to find a manager who they want in the long term, not someone who's going to try and be a quick fix. For the last couple of years that Messi might be there, I think they need to find a manager who will come in and from day one have a plan in mind. how Pep came to Man City transformed how he played, got rid of all the players that was there pretty much, especially in defence.
Yeah.
Look at how Klopp did. You need those managers to come in with a 5-year, 6-year project in mind and stick to that. But the problem is, I think fans need to put their expectation and lower it for the time being. I think the fans need to realise that they're in a massive mess at the minute, Barcelona, and they just need to be patient and just sit back and watch the club rebuild itself and get back to where it belongs.
Because like you said earlier, this has been kind of waiting to happen for the past 5 or 6 years, because they've not got that strategy right, where they've kind of invested in a short-term fix, just throwing money at players like Coutinho, like Ousmane Dembele, like Griezmann, just last season. They're throwing money at players rather than maybe building a more balanced squad. I mean, like you've seen last night, the defence clearly needs reshaping. The base of midfield needs reshaping, and the attack. I think Luis Suarez is about done.
I agree. Especially for the level of Barcelona.
As an elite attacker, yeah. So there's plenty of things to sort out there regarding that. When we were just on about a manager for the long term, who do you think that manager should be? Do you think it should be someone who's a Barcelona man, or do you think it should be someone who's had plenty of experience in the footballing world that can get Barcelona back on track to where they were 5-6 years ago?
It's a tough question, that, because obviously we're going through a phase now where we're seeing all these ex-legends of the game all turn into managers. You know, Pirlo, the latest, being the Juventus manager. I think you could go for someone who knows the club, but I think they've got to that point. I don't think anyone knows what the club is anymore. You know, they've completely lost their identity, I think, in my opinion. You know, when I look at Barca, when we was growing up and you see them as the best team in the world, they had an identity. You know, they changed the modern game as we all knew it under Guardiola, and now I just don't know their identity. They've lost it, so I don't know whether they try and find someone who knows Barcelona and tries to get back to how they used to be, or you go to someone with lots of experience in managing, someone who might not be first choice on paper. You know, someone like what's his name from Leipzig, the coach
Nagelsmann.
There. Yeah, someone like him. You know, a young coach, enthusiastic. Someone like that could come in and play his style of football. You know, I don't know whether you agree. You know, realistically, I don't think he'd go to someone like Barcelona. But, you know, someone like that...
That mould of manager.
Could be a good option, yeah. That mould of manager, someone to arrive, I think that could be a good shout for Barcelona. Someone who's young, has lots of new ideas about the game. Just to refresh it.
Yeah. Well, they've tried... I think Quique Setien was an attempt of maybe trying to get back on track with the style of football, because Setien played an exciting brand of football at Betis, and it's not worked out for him at Barca. But I think there was an attempt there with the appointment of Setien to try and get back on track to that, you know, that lovely passing football that's become synonymous with Barcelona, you know, over the past decade, over the past 20 years. But yeah, I think I do agree with you. I think you need someone who's young, someone who's enthusiastic, someone who brings a lot of energy, because that team, as you saw last night, it needs a new breed of life, because it looked dead out on its feet. So it needs someone with a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, whether that's someone inside the club, maybe someone, not inside the club, but someone who's played for the club and who's a Barca man, someone like Xavi, someone like Puyol, Iniesta, whoever it is. Maybe it's that, or maybe, like you said, with Nagels, the mould of manager like a Nagelsmann, who's young and who's someone who looks like they could be one of the best managers in the world and changing the game for the future. So yeah, that's a new manager covered. We'll move on to what happened to Barca's academy, because like we've touched on, the crop of 08-09 with Pedro, Busquets, Messi. I'm sure I'm missing loads of players out here that I can't think of off the top of my head. What do you think's gone wrong there? Do you think it's because Barcelona have become so good? Do you think it's a shift from breeding these new academy players? It's a shift from that to we need results now. It needs to be a short-term fix. We need to win the Champions League this year, otherwise it's a failure. Do you think it's a shift from breeding those players to a short-term fix?
I think ever since the last success in Champions League, when the MSN trio of Messi, Suarez, Neymar, that was when they last truly hit the top of world football. That's the last I remember Barcelona being absolutely world class to watch. And I think since the loss of Neymar, I think, like you say, they've just focused on quick results. And obviously they've been successful domestically in winning league titles and stuff, things like that. But they expect it. When Messi said a couple of seasons ago in front of a packed Camp Nou saying, we want to win the Champions League this season, and then they collapsed against Roma. The following season they collapsed against Liverpool, and then this season they've collapsed against Bayern Munich. I think they've got all that expectation and all the focus on trying to win the Champions League, and that's why I think they've thrown all this money that I've touched on before in trying to find a good starting 11 just to go out and win the Champions League. But maybe that's why they've shifted the focus from their academy and bringing through this golden generation, because they've just pumped that much money into the first team. The pathway, like you said, the pathway of academy products to the first team doesn't really seem existent. I know they've got Ansu Fati and etc., but there's not many coming through.
It's very limited.
And when you've got players, 100 million plus players like Dembele and Griezmann on the bench, I think that says it all. The current state of Barcelona, you've got so much money sitting on the bench not playing, and it doesn't help because they've had two managers this season, haven't they, Barcelona? And the previous manager brought in Griezmann, and then the new manager comes in and doesn't rate him. I think they need to stick to one manager who can bring in his style of players, and I think you'll see results in the long term. But yeah, I think if someone came in and focused on bringing people through from the academy, Barcelona could get those values of the club back. But I think that's why they shifted the focus, because they've got all the focus on trying to win the Champions League. And to do that, they think the best way to get to the top is by just paying these ridiculous sums for all these players who have flopped since arriving at the club.
Yeah, see, even the B team, though. I mean, the B team have shifted their focus from, the B team used to be used as a platform for these young players to show themselves competitively against adults rather than playing just at youth level. That's a pathway. That was an easier pathway to the first team. But even the B team now is stuck with or full of mostly 26, 27, 28-year-olds that are stifling these young talents that are coming out of La Masia into the B team. They're stifling their pathway to the first team, and now you're starting to see players coming from La Masia that are starting to leave. I mean, you look at Grimaldo, who was at Barcelona when he was 16. He signed for Benfica, and look how good he is now. He's probably one of the most highly rated left backs in Europe. You've got Dani Olmo, obviously under Nagelsmann at Leipzig, who's obviously playing brilliant football. You've got Eric Garcia.
There's also what's his name? Had it until I said that. Then carry on talking, Lucas, and it'll come back. Is
it Xavi Simons?
Obviously, he's gone to PSG. Yeah, he's gone to PSG. He was one I thought about earlier.
He's started a game in pre-season for PSG. He's only 17, 18 years of age.
Kubo, the one who's just gone out on loan from Real Madrid. Yeah. He was a Barcelona academy product, and then he's made the switch. There's another one who's left.
So because the pathway to the first team has been kind of congested because of, like you said, these short-term fixes throwing huge sums of money at players. That's why their academy, I think, is starting to maybe not be considered as the be-all and end-all of football. Going to learn your football elsewhere might be better, and you've probably got a better chance of reaching the first team. I mean, obviously you've seen at Ajax recently, the talent that they're bringing through. and obviously other academies across Europe and South America look like the better places to go right now than Barcelona. So we've got 2 more topics to discuss. We've got the presidential elections. They come next year in 2021. Obviously, the current president, Bartomeu, is resigning. So there'll be a brand new president. What do you think the new president should look to implement? Because obviously we've seen with Bartomeu, the Barca fans are clearly very much against him as president now. What do you think the emphasis should be on for the new president to look at?
I think the emphasis should be either to... I think they just need to think long term instead of short term quick fixes or attempts of quick fixes. I mean, they've not been very successful with it. I think the new president needs to have new ideas. It's just someone who's the polar opposite to the current president. I think look towards a manager who will promote youth, try and get this style of play back at Barcelona. It's not the same as the past because modern football is changing all the time, but just someone who will look at youth and just someone who's completely new. They just need a complete new rebrand of the club, I think. Inside and out. Staff, obviously I don't know the ins and outs of how all the different staff, coaching staff and everything, but there's something deeply wrong with that club, and I think they need a complete, just wash out, flush everybody out of the club that's been there and just rebuild completely. I think that's the only way that Barcelona can just improve and develop again, because otherwise they're going to go down the same slope.
Yeah, it stems. We've obviously mentioned this a lot already in the first 20 minutes, but this stems from the academy all the way up to the first team. So it's a rebuild of the academy, keeping these really talented players happy and clear a pathway if they're talented enough to the first team, rather than stifling them and then letting them go to European rivals like we've seen with Simmons. Like you said, long term, they need to look long term rather than short term, because if they carry on, they're gonna keep flailing every season, and they're starting to lose it domestically as well. I mean, we've not even mentioned the fact that they didn't win the Liga this
Real
season.
Madrid, I think Real Madrid have focused on buying younger players. I know they spent big sums of money, but on young talent who seem very promising. I think the direction they're going in is very promising.
And obviously, again, we'll get onto life after Messi in just a second. But I think the way Madrid have actually built after Ronaldo is looking very promising. I mean, like you said, with where they're buying their youth product from, and starting to rely a little bit more on youth, both in attack and in midfield. We've seen with Valverde, Vinicius and Rodrigo. We've got Renier coming in this season. So maybe Barca should look towards the model of Real Madrid.
I think a similar model that Real Madrid have implemented. I think Zidane's done wonders at Real Madrid in the Champions League. I know it's disappointing for them this season to be knocked out against Man City, but I don't think anybody, I don't know how you felt, but I didn't ever think they was seriously going to challenge on the Champions League front this season.
No.
I think domestically they've been good, but they're nowhere near the sort of heights that Bayern Munich and Man City are this season.
Well, after the restart, I think they didn't win in 5 away games in La Liga. I think when Real beat Barca at the Bernabeu just before the lockdown,
yeah.
I think that's when the tide started to change. And Barca after the restart haven't been very good.
I think the best way to look at it, if you look at Real Madrid and Barcelona, and if you try to predict, if you looked at their squads and predicted in 5 years' time who's going to be more successful, I think Real Madrid every single year would be a lot better.
You'd say at the state of things, at the state of affairs right now, you'd say Real Madrid with the way that they're...
That's why I think quite strongly that a rebuild is going to take 5-6 years, to get them back to where they want to be, because Real Madrid are going to keep on improving. if they keep following the trajectory that they're on right now. I think Barcelona needs to look at the rival and appreciate what they've done and try and implement a similar sort of model.
They've got to
definitely think that.
Yeah, they've got to take the pressure off as well, because there's far too much pressure on whoever's in charge at Barcelona to win the league, to win the Champions League. So whoever comes in as the new manager, they have to lower the expectations, or at least say, if you lose a couple of games on the bounce, you can't get on the manager's back.
Yeah, exactly. That's like back to what I said, with the fans' expectation. I think they need to lower it just for the time being and just appreciate that there's a lot of work that needs doing.
Well, because I think they've been so used to success under Guardiola and under Enrique, and then somewhat under Valverde as well. They do need to lower those expectations, especially after Messi leaves, which we'll actually come on to now. So how will Barcelona cope with life after Messi? Because this season in La Liga, Messi scored 25 goals, won the Golden Boot for the 4th year in a row, and provided 21 assists. I think it's only him and I think maybe Sancho are the only 2 players this season with over 20 goals and 20 assists. And then you look down the rest of the squad in terms of scorers. You got Suarez on 16 goals, and he only started 22 games. He was out for a little while with an injury, and then after Suarez is Griezmann, who hasn't had a particularly great first season, and he's only scored 9. So they've only got 2 players there in La Liga that have scored over 10 goals for Barca. And you'd think back to the teams under Enrique with MSN, under Guardiola, that wouldn't be imaginable with just 2 players scoring over 10 goals. So going back to life after Messi, where do you think the trajectory, what do you think the trajectory will be after Messi retires or leaves?
I think obviously they'll miss him loads because he's still producing world-class numbers every season of his career. He's been phenomenal for Barcelona, but I think in terms of how they need to be, I think it's not a bad thing in a couple of years' time when Messi either leaves or retires. I think when you think about how much money that they pump into like Messi's wages a year, I'm not sure the exact number, but I know it's a lot. I think it'll benefit them financially, and I think it's more healthy for them to not be paying all these players ridiculous wages. I think that's why. I think that, as sad as it will be, because he's been a great servant and he's been the best player in the world at Barcelona, I think when its time comes, it's going to benefit them in the long term when he goes. And I don't think any football fan would want to see the day when Messi, and obviously like his counterpart Ronaldo, retire. But I think Messi leaving isn't necessarily the worst thing that could happen to Barcelona. I don't know whether you agree, but that's just my personal opinion. I think it isn't the worst thing when he does leave the club.
I think if it depends, because if they we've mentioned this loads already. If they get the rebuild right, then maybe they can benefit from. I don't want to say benefit, because that's just. I mean, it's Lionel Messi at the end of the day. Obviously, that's it's a massive loss, but not benefit, but bounce back relatively quickly from the loss. Of Messi, rather than. If they get the rebuild right, but if they carry on like they are, like I said, with investing in big money in players, then maybe not.
There is the risk, like if Messi left, there is the risk they could genuinely. I don't think they would, but they could genuinely turn into like a mid-table team. Losing someone who's producing those numbers. They haven't got many goals in the team, as it is. So I think it could genuinely affect them big time, but at the same time I don't think they'd allow that to happen. They need to have a contingency plan for all of these, don't they? Every football club does. For the starter man, if they ever left or retired or even got injured, every club has to have a plan in mind. But don't get me wrong, I think it will hit them in the short term a lot, and we're hindering all of this on whether they do rebuild and whether they do it successfully.
That's exactly what I was going to say. It all hinges on the new president, what the policy is there, obviously the new manager, and transfer strategy and whatnot. So obviously this all hinges on kind of on Messi. Do you think just one last bit and then we'll wrap it up? What was I going to ask? I've completely forgot my question.
Mine's gone blank.
It was that was it. Do you think Barcelona relying on Messi is Messi's individual brilliance? Do you think that's hindering Barcelona?
I think it is. I mean, if you pin all your hopes, all eggs in one basket on one player to perform for you, I think the expectation, obviously Messi knows how to deal with it because he's had that for the last few years now, but it can't be good for a club, can it? You know, to rely on one player being your bailout, like get out of jail free card. You know, you can't rely on one player to do that. I don't think any club around the world who's successful has that one player they depend on. Do they? You know, all these top sides now in the modern day have a world-class team. You don't base it on one player and just pass the... I mean, this is how Barcelona are nowadays. You rely on Messi to carry them. And he's had to do that. He's had to carry that for the last 4 or 5 years, you know, since the departure of players like Neymar and the prime of Suarez. I think he's had to deal with it all by himself. It can't be good, can it, for the club?
No. Yeah, well, it's definitely going to be interesting to watch how Barca react, not just from last night's loss, but how they react for the new season and where they go next. I think it's very interesting to look at. So I guess Barcelona are going to be a very interesting watch, not just next season, but in the long term, both on and off the pitch. So yeah, we'll wrap it up there. If you did enjoy the podcast, I know it's a little different today with just me and Phil, a little bit shorter. If you did enjoy it, make sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and if you want us to do anything like this again on your club or on a topic of your choosing, let us know in the comments or let us know on Instagram at D451podcast. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you all for listening / watching, and we will speak to you all very, very soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye.